I was at the Ringling School of Art, and after a couple years, I was in commercial art and advertising, and I've always liked making things. And at some point in time, it just dawned on me that I probably wasn't going to be real happy, designing cornflake boxes, or, something like that. I like making things. And it just so happened about the time that I was at Ringling, they had an exhibit, a Tiffany exhibit. And I grew up in a little church, didn't have any stained glass, and I'd never really thought that much about stained glass. When I saw that stuff, I was fairly taken by it. And then I had an instructor at Ringling that had designed stained glass windows freelance. He was a contemporary surrealist, I guess, kind of in the vein of Dali, very, very realism and some surreal stuff thrown in there. And he had suggested at one point in time, because a lot of my earlier artworks were a lot of heavy lines, flat color, which looks a lot like stained glass, leaded glass. And I had never really considered that, thought anything about it. And it was about the same time that I saw the Ringling exhibit. And it just started me thinking about what I wanted to do. And ultimately, I ended up, after being at Ringling for a couple years, I moved back towards home, which is just south of Philadelphia, and got accepted into the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts with the intention of continuing my art education and finding a studio to work in. There were, at the time, there were very few studios in Florida, and those that were there weren't really hiring, so I didn't have, staying in Florida wasn't a real huge option, although, I would have liked to, but I ended up moving back up there. I got in a situation there where I ended up going to the academy, and I got a job working at Willett Studios, which I believe is probably one of the oldest stained glass studios in the country. The downside of it was they had some very talented people there, but the downside from my point of view is that it was a union shop, and unions control the ratio of journeymen to apprentices, so that the studios don't use apprentice labor, where they should be using journeymen. So anyway, that I ended up there for a while, and then I found through one of the guys that worked there, they told me about a studio. It was in High Point, North Carolina, and the fellow there at Willett's in Philadelphia said, it's a small shop. He said, but the upside is that you'll learn a lot. And there was an old Englishman that worked there that served an indentured apprenticeship in England in the 1920s as a glass painter. He went to the Royal Academy of Arts a couple days a week, and he worked in the studio a couple days a week. Initially, cleaning glass for the painters, mixing paint. The paint that we use, I'll show you later, is in powdered form, and I actually mix it every time I use it. And then, so I went to work down there. The work was very different. It was much more country church kind of windows and stuff like that. But this old Mr. Dixon, this old Englishman, was I revered him, and I was lucky enough to spend some time with him, and he showed me pictures and talked to me about restoration work he had done in Canterbury Cathedral and places like that after the war. And it was an interesting little side education. I'd taken a glass class, painting class, with a guy named Albinus Elkis. He was a Lithuanian-born glass painter, served an apprenticeship in Europe, and stuff like that. Very, very cool guy. And he told me one time that he could tell whether a window was any good from outside, never seeing the color or seeing how it was painted or anything. He said, I can tell by the leading if somebody knows what they're doing. If the leading is lyrical and it's structurally sound, he says, then I don't have any doubt in my mind that the window inside is going to be just as nice. So this is the lead channel we used to put it together. And you can see it looks like a little I-beam in the glass. Fits in these channels. The center part's called the heart of the lead. You have to allow for the heart. So if you just had a pencil drawing or a real skinny line and you cut everything every time you put a lead in, the window will grow. So what happens on this, I use a Sharpie line. This piece of glass here, I cut on this side of the line. This piece of glass here, I cut on this side of the line. So it automatically sizes everything down to allow for the leads. Well, so I've always really thought about that when I was designing, simplifying things. Some people design things with these really ungodly amoeba shape. And a lot of them, they actually have to cut them with like diamond saws and stuff. They're hard to cut like this. You can, but it's a real challenge. And the downside of that is glass is not made to be handled like that or be in those kind of shapes. So it's real easy for it to break. So to me, when I'm designing glass, it's not only how does my design work, but it's also respecting the materials. So, you can see most of these cuts are fairly simple. I mean, I got little, bumps where the leaves are and where the flowers are, but even the flowers, I mean, you could cut this to where it real closely contoured the flower, but the leading's gonna be a mess when you do that. It gets really hard to deal with at times. So I've, over the years, have really learned to simplify the leading. And I think the designs are cleaner and more concise. I like, even in something that's got a lot going on in it, the lead work is still real concise. I posted a picture of one of these that I was glazing on Facebook, and a friend of mine that's in the glass trade, she commented, she goes, your leading is really, really nice. Because she recognized the way it was laid out and the way it was glazed. The process of putting the window together is called glazing. And so she recognized the quality of the glazing, I guess, for lack of a better word. And that made me feel good, because and it's funny, and I guess probably a lot of artists are like this. When I'm just working on a stained glass window, or I'm working on a sign, I do sign work also. When I'm working on those things, a lot of times when I'm working on things, I'm not thinking about what my clients would think of my stuff. I'm thinking more about what my peers would think. Because my clients, by and large, are not educated about what I'm doing. It's pretty or it's not pretty. But my peers know what's gone into the piece. And they know if you've done a crummy job or you've done a really good job. So yeah, it's kind of funny. Somebody asked me one time, why do you care what they think? I said, well, I mean, I don't lay awake at night worrying about it, but I said that's kind of my barometer, is what my peers think, not what does. I mean, obviously I want my clients to be happy. I don't want to make it sound like I don't care what my clients think. That's not the case at all. Anyway, I worked there for a couple years, and I was primarily a glass cutter, which is what I'm doing now. And I always enjoyed that aspect of it, and I learned to paint glass, and I ended up moving here. It was funny when I started my business, like I said, the guy didn't pay very well. I figured, well, I'll go into business for myself. I cannot possibly make any less than I'm making working for him. I was wrong. I figured my first year in business, I figured up what I made. I think I made like 85 cents an hour. So it was slow going. Unfortunately, a lot of artists, I have a lot more artistic ability than I do business sense, and so it was interesting learning to run a business. But anyway, it was. I always like to tell people I succeeded in spite of myself, whatever that means. Used to be I could call up and get glass and have it here, within a week or two at the latest. And it took me probably 5 or 6 weeks to get this glass. And I had to refigure my order 2 or 3 times because the factory didn't ship my distributor the stuff that they asked for. And so, then I can't really start cutting, because if I can't get a particular glass, then how's that going to affect all the other colors that I've already picked out? So it became a big snowball, and it held the job up, just trying to get the glass in. So, but let's see, like you see all this stuff, you see all this. There's no such thing as scrap. You try to save everything because you might need it, and sometimes you get commissions where you got a lot of little pieces and stuff like that, and you can utilize your scrap, and that's always fun because you've already paid for it. It feels like it's free money, But yeah, being in business, a lot of different kinds of business. Part of your job is to be a psychologist. You got to work with the people. You're an educator. You're a psychologist. People ask me frequently, why is it so expensive? And something like what we're doing now, videoing this, people can start to see, this is not something. There's no machines that do this. And with this particular project, I had trouble getting glass. There's been some changes in the glass industry also, and I was explaining to my clients have been wonderful about that, because it was really nothing I could do about it. It was really kind of scary, actually, having that much trouble getting glass. There's been some changes in regulations, and glass companies have tightened up, and it's become a seller's market for glass. And so it was used to be I could call up and get glass and have it here, within a week or two at the latest. Yeah, it really is. It's just a question of getting it in there, realizing what you've got to have to get by and to make that living. Because really, as a businessman, and at first, part of my issue too is I was just trying to cover my time and materials, and overhead, and I took a couple business courses, fortunately, and started figuring out stuff like overhead, insurance, and if you don't factor all that stuff in, you're paying for it out of your pocket, and then you're entitled to a return on your investment. So you're trying to you do all that stuff, and you had a markup. So anyway, that part of it was fairly interesting, trying to learn to be a businessman. It's got a little hump in it. Good, and here's a big thing too. I've talked to people before, and they say, well, I don't want to do commission work because I want to do, artists that say, I want to be free to do what I want to do. And I can appreciate that. However, the upside of commission work is when I get a commission, I know the job is sold. I'm going to get paid. If you do a painting and you stick it in a gallery, it could be there for a year before it sells or more. You never know. It's just the way things are. So commission work is a challenge in that you are working with a lot of different parameters. You've got size requirements. You've got your client's desires. You've got lighting, which side of the building it's on. You've got a lot of different things that you consider when you sit down to start designing a window. And then on top of all that, budget. I think I had mentioned that before. You've still got to deal with that also. Pump the glass. Let's see if that'll break now. Yeah, that's one of the things that's really different about cutting stained glass versus cutting window glass. Window glass is really smooth, and this stuff's got all kinds of bumps and bubbles and divots and weird little things, and you can just hit one wrong and the glass will just break in the wrong place. It's nature of the beast, so you don't get too upset about it. You just get another piece and cut it again. Yeah, the only time that becomes problematic, I was talking about the mouth-blown European glass, that's costing, you're cutting a piece of glass that's $30 a square foot or more wholesale. You get what they used to you get a little nervous. In art school, we used to talk about that because you do it in life class and stuff. You do a lot of drawings on newsprint, and gesture drawings, and then all of a sudden you go get a nice piece of paper, a nice piece of charcoal paper, or pastel paper, or something like that. And all of a sudden you freeze up because now instead of a piece of newsprint that costs a couple cents, you've got this nice piece of paper that costs $3 or $4, and you're a starving, college art student, and you think, oh my gosh, I can't draw on this, And so you get all freaked out, and then your drawing looks like hell because you're so nervous you can't draw. Cementing windows is typically it's the low man on the totem pole job in a studio. That's where you start out. You start out in a studio, you're going to be cementing windows. But you smear the grout all over the window, you work it up under the channels, and then you press the leads down to close the channels up, and you dump whiting on it to absorb it. I make my own putty. It's plaster of Paris and whiting and linseed oil and mineral spirits and a little lamp black to darken it up and a little naphtha to help it dry. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. As long as you're careful with them. Being a dad. It's the best job ever. But anyway, you do all that. And then on a larger window like this, you'll notice I have horizontal lines designed in. These particular windows are 17 feet tall. And you see I've got heavier lines, and that's where the panels are broken. The glass is broken. That's aluminum frames right there. So I've got 4 panels going down here and 4 panels coming up here. And each one of those lines across here, it gets a reinforcing bar. It's a 1/8 inch by 1/2 inch steel bar that's soldered on the window this way. And that, because lead is soft enough to bend around the glass, it's also soft enough. If you've seen old stained glass windows, sometimes they kind of get a pot belly down at the bottom, kind of like us guys, What happens is, all the pressure of gravity and everything on the windows, after a while, it pushes down and the weight's got to go somewhere, so it starts to buckle out. It's really bad if you have like a flat border going across the bottom there. So one thing, and this is where you can usually tell if somebody is new to stained glass or somebody's been designing for a while. An experienced designer will always put his structural lines in before he ever starts the design. Because you design to it. And that's why I have all my breaks where my bars are going. It makes the window much stronger. It makes it easier to bar. It makes it, you don't want, especially on the outside edges, you don't want a bar running across. If that was one piece of glass, you don't want a bar running across here and being soldered there, because if you hit it wrong, it's going to break that glass, and you're going to be really, really angry. For bigger installations like stuff, I'm fully competent at doing it, but I'm one of those, since I do work by myself, I use subs for a lot of things, and smaller windows I just install them by myself. It's no big deal. Most residential stuff I'm doing solo. If it's bigger windows so they're up high, then I've got a friend that helps me with my sign work and my installs both. He's very competent. He's been in remodeling forever, so he's a very competent carpenter and finish carpenter and trim, which I'm not. Woodworking, I'm one of those hacks. So I hire somebody that knows what they're doing. And if it's a commercial job, a bigger job with a lot of aluminum frames and stuff like that, then I typically, I've got a commercial glass contractor that I work with for those. That works out well. But both of them are really good to work with. So having people you can trust to work with you on projects is crucial. It's essential. It's non-negotiable.